Nice, nice. I was just looking into that Victoria VR pretty heavily since we talked about it. That's gonna be uh that's gonna be pretty big, don't you think?
It's gonna change the game, man. I heard about it like 2 months ago when you or my friend was telling me about they had released the coin and they had done like a fair launch on it, but then you had to stake it for the right to like mint the land. And the fact that it's on Unreal Engine, I'm super excited to see how it goes because it's things are going to look clean, unlike Sandbox, essentially, or some of these other platforms.
So is Unreal Engine kind of just like the tech behind it, where what they build everything upon, um, and then the actual real estate aspect, the actual metaverse is Victoria VR. Like it's two separate things,
Well,
right?
so it's the technology, right? So Unreal Engine is kind of the standard, you could say, renderings operate on. You could look at it as like Minecraft and then something of like Assassin's Creed, right? The reason you like Assassin's Creed is because that's super high definition, right? And that rendering and those, that's all Unreal Engine, right? You can get really high graphics tied to it. Biggest problem with, Decentraland and it's not built on something that can render those graphics, right? And so what you're left with is a more pixelated, experience because it just costs too much to build that infrastructure to have your ecosystem run on it. Not apparently not for Victoria VR, or they think that there's a way to do it feasibly. And I think that's just kind of like the next iteration. Everything can't look like Minecraft in Web3, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, it's gotta evolve in some way. But with that being said, it's not they're not to that point yet, right? Have they even released that first set of land? I know they had a few different tiers.
No, they have not. Have the exact time frame on when, but I know that um, I know when it comes from a building perspective that they're reaching out to a few people and talking about having a collaborative, I wouldn't say like open API, but willing to share their development tools. I thought was kind of
Right,
a
right.
unique strategy because usually, well, I mean, I guess Sandbox did it too with Land Vault and Boomer, but not so much now with it. So if they do that and they go out in the community and say, hey, here's all of our tools, like work with us and build on top of it, right? I think that's the best play because that then sky's the limit.
Yeah, yeah. That's they if they can get it to like and that's everything compatible with every gaming console, right? That's the main goal right there is to have it work as a true video
I,
game.
well, I think that the experience inside of it, right? When you look at, like when you play Red Dead Redemption or you play any of these online games, right? They're rendered in high level graphics, right? And ideally 4K, and infrastructure can't do that. Really, Unreal Engine is basically the standard for doing that. And so as P2E kind of evolves and as Metaverse kind of evolves, the technology that they're going to build that on, I'm assuming, unless something comes out that's a better platform than Unreal Engine, I'm assuming that developers are going to look to develop on that unless, for some reason the community doesn't want that. But I think even now with more P2E games, people want a crisper, cleaner experience. It's just that Unreal Engine is the technology to deliver it. Um, I think it's going to be interesting because you guys have plots in Decentraland, right? And Sandbox. You guys are building in both those environments. What are your thoughts, Tfar? Are you going to try and pick up land? Oh, Tfar, you're muted. Well, kind of continue on that piece. My thoughts are that irregardless if it's Victoria VR, Decentraland, Sandbox, or any other metaverse play that somebody's looking to build an ecosystem on, that there's a place for a community to develop on it. Sandbox isn't going to fit everybody. Decentraland isn't going to fit everybody. Um, Victoria VR is not going to fit every NFT World's not going to fit every. I mean, every week there's a new thing. Ideally, the one that opens up their tools to the community and the developers, right? Like Dowdon's looking for an Unreal metaverse, right? Our system's not going to scale on Decentraland or Sandbox.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got rugged.
Yeah, I saw that.
Jeez.
So
Are we
the
all good
idea is,
here?
yeah. I was just saying that the idea is that whatever you guys have Decentraland plots, right? And then Sandbox plots. I think so, right?
So Metaverse Hospitality, we're building on Sandbox and NFT World Land.
Yeah. So, and I agree. Like
for now, for now, I know obviously I have the future is, the real VR reality. So yeah.
But I think that's what I was saying when you got rugged is there's a place for everything. Some collections and some arts are going to not want Unreal. They're going to want to have the NFT world experience, right? And there needs to be a platform for that. I don't think it's not an if, it's not a, if or it's not one or the other. It's an entire ecosystem ideally of these, right? And who's to say that if you're trying to offer like a dynamic experience like in hospitality that you don't have a version Sandbox and in Decentraland and in Victoria VR, right? I
Yeah,
mean, arguably, I don't
100%.
know whether the reason there wouldn't be.
I don't know if you saw the big news with Marriott and how they plan to honestly
Oh yeah,
merge like the entire concierge services to where you can experience your experience before you book it, really. So yeah, it's getting there very, very quickly.
I think that's right around the corner. I think most big companies though are doing it for themselves. They're not doing it from a launcher perspective. Where Marriott, you see Atari doing it too. They're gonna they're building a hotel in Las Vegas. They're gonna have something of like however many collectibles there are on Atari, which was probably the largest ecosystem of games prior to anything else. Imagine all of those in an NFT metaverse, right? And play to earn within their ecosystem. Like these huge companies are going to start community aspect piece. I think they're going to overlook that. I think they're going to do like a Nike, right? Where they're going to launch something, promise one thing, and then you're not going to own your IP or the terms are going to change. They don't have a history of doing things for the community as much as their shareholders.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who really plays into that, both on the big level and small level, both sides. We'll see all different types of aspects when it comes to either taking, it and giving everything completely over to someone like a Nike, kind of like that deal, or just investors giving their hands to the smaller company and let them reign.
I think there's a hybrid ecosystem that's best done right, where like some type of community DAO governance layered in with an executive management approach. If there's going to be, in real life utility tied to it, which is what a lot of Dowdon and you see Marriott trying to do and all these other ones like, oh, hey, we want to bridge your experience in the metaverse to it in real life. But at the same time, you can't do all of that really in Web3 without having some reward stake for your ecosystem, right? It's like, okay, well, if I do all this, Marriott, what reward point do I get? Is that supposed to be SPG where all of a sudden the value of my points are worth 70% less because they're within an ecosystem and I can't trade? I don't think they're thinking far enough ahead as much as they're like, well, we can just get our entire user base to do an NFT and call it a metaverse. The ones that are doing it right, I think, will source the community, not say do it like Treasure DAO, but have DAO governance, voted leaders that work with the partners in real life in a regulated way that represents and rewards both sides. Not the traditional Web 2 model of, we just shove our stuff on you and you get nothing and be happy with it. I don't want
I
to see
think
that.
regulated was a key term there too, because I mean every big company like that, even OpenSea, that's probably why they haven't released a coin yet, because regulations and the big VCs behind them won't allow it. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
an interesting aspect of it.
100%. I mean, And depending on, especially if they're too big already, where, I think most of us would agree that OpenSea is not really in the creative mode anymore. They're in the, I don't know what mode they're in. I don't know. I hope maybe they can put some more money to support, but
Yeah,
they're not really, they don't listen to the
just
community,
something.
right? They're not governed. They're not community governed at all. And frankly, looks rare isn't either. I don't care if you're on that bandwagon, but it's not true. So the idea is that is Marriott gonna go and Adidas did do it good. As on it, they spent some time in the community before they built a product and released it. And so the idea is that what hospitality company, whether it's a big company like Marriott, or you're Atari building hotels and doing it, which one is gonna build and rally around their community and really be able to augment it. And I think, regulation is difficult if you're trying to like raise money through a DAO, because anyone knows that you're going to run into securities issues. But you can license right to use, within a regulated way, and build NFTs that are claimable and burnable for merchandise and in real life experiences. We already see this now with, Adidas now claiming stuff and within it. And so I think there's going to be a play there, right? Because, hey, I can use my rewards points for, upgrades in rooms, or NFTs that are only limited if I stayed within a season, right? And so,
And they'll
once again,
probably
it's
have
all
to
about
wait
recording.
until it's an easy type of transfer. So, we'll see what type of time frame we're on, but they'll probably be one of the first people to really get the mainstream on transferring assets like that freely.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of mid platforms trying to do too, like Flowchain kind of solved that for NFL All Day, and now they're launching the UFC thing, right? And so I think some are trying to get around the security compliance by launching on a platform that already has its ecosystem, where that once again, they're not doing ICOs where, oh man, if we scale, then all of a sudden we're in this weird position. um, that's the biggest challenge. Is unfortunately we're in such an emerging industry that a lot of this is trial by error, and most of it's going to come down to who's willing to lose money and figure this out and lead the way in it and put resources. Because the teams that kind of forge ahead knowing that it's going to get dirty and muddy, and play in those gray areas and still build, um, they're the ones that when kind of that regulation kind of comes to fruition, they're just going to be ahead. And it's trying to find that balance of you know innovation versus being compliant, which is tough in the Web3 space.
Right, it is. With that, let's talk about Dowdon a little bit and how you plan on kind of bridging that gap with VR land and the hospitality industry, and where you're taking your company in that aspect.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So where Dowdon kind of formed is, I own a vacation rental management in real life. We have managed a portfolio of high-end luxury rentals across Vegas, and we had a bunch of things under development. The idea is that what if you could build an augmented experience, within the homes, where we put in mural canvases which allow you to push NFTs to the home. But what if when you checked in with your wallet, if you owned an exact model of that home in the metaverse, it would pull down that user profile, so they could have their room assembled the way they want. And so the idea is, yeah, I mean, you have a piece of utility in the metaverse, and that's great. But as you could tie into these ecosystems, you could really begin to change the user experience. Already in our homes, we talk about, you know, companies like Marriott. What made them successful was the amenities they provided within their hotels, right? And the more you cater to the guest experience, and so the idea of being able to um, help bridge that gap for my company to be able to enter into Web3 and be able to provide a user experience to somebody, and build a project around that, really was what Dowdon set to conquer, both from a regulatory perspective, because once again, we're a regulated industry. We're beholden to reporting to the Nevada Real Estate Division. And so, I had to go and get my executive team, which has never put ETH on their balance sheets, right? Are not familiar with Web3, right? These are 60-year-old men.
So how hard was it to convince them? Because yeah, I've gone through some similar conversations, and
Luckily, believe it or not, Majestic, my company, only became legally compliant with the state of Nevada as of May this year. It wasn't recognized and had legal compliance. Short-term rentals didn't have legal compliance around the industry for the last 7 years, and I built my company regardless. And when we were being pursued by the state, this broker took me underneath and realized what we were building, and kind of honestly recognized that we were in the same spot now that we are with Web3, where regulation hadn't quite caught up to the industry and somebody had built within that environment. And luckily, like most things, if there's trust within that partnership, even though somebody may not bring something that makes complete sense, this gentleman knows it, and he's also always been ahead of his time. And so being able to now say, well, hey, if we do bring this in real life utility piece, which is what we really focused on. I know the metaverse is the play, but I think most communities are using that, and it's like a marketing tagline. It's like, well, we slap metaverse on it, it's utility and we can pump it. It's like, no, like, what if you built something that actually had real utility, and then if you did build in the metaverse, you tied something to it. But once again, you can't start with the art. You actually have to start with the legal compliance of it, and that's the real tough piece. We got that solved, built mechanically within a launcher, not only for our own pieces, for opportunities just for DAO governance within consulting, but also ideally pretty soon to hopefully solve that security compliance piece. Looking down on this, some of the goats that have been in here saw some of the original designs for DAO Dawn months ago. It's skeleton DAO governance platform, and we kind of had to push that off to the side because the original marketplace person that we were launching with needed to delay a little bit. But we kept building regardless, because we knew, irregardless of what, whether it was Majestic, my company, or any of the 3 other projects that are going to be launching with us very shortly, that you needed to have a launcher interface, and that needed to be able to make sure that you could be compliant irregardless of what you were trying to do. And if you were a DAO or a project that had secured funds in a way that you wanted to use to purchase goods in real life, potentially an opportunity to burn those tokens for new KYC issue ones that would potentially allow them to do that. A little bit of alpha there. And so if we can overcome that, then I think the ecosystem in general can grow. Those who put art a little bit before utility and kind of had to eat their words in some projects maybe can bring those pieces to life in real life. So, Fifi, how's it going?
well, yeah, went deep into the economics of it. It sounds like you got that side of it ready to go.
Yeah. So then the second piece, if just go to is what is the NFT? It's a mint of 7,777 access cards. You'll need these to partake in the DAO launcher itself when it launches. And the fun thing is irregardless if you partake in any of these subsequent ecosystem projects underneath it, the first one you've kind of heard about and its subsequent things underneath it, that card is going to augment and change. And so as Dons, if you think yourself as we're talking concierge. Well, if you go to Marriott one time and you get a player's card, it's going to be red most likely. But as you keep going, that card is going to change. And it's going to unlock access, and it's going to unlock perks. We wanted to represent that not only in real life utility, but within a game theory layer of art. So eventually we'd be able to tell who the real Dons were, who would quote unquote have black cards and who would still be on silver. And having and being able to reward those people, irregardless if they minted the individual collections, but just from a game theory. And so we hope to, ideally, really a really strong community about those who want in real life utility and to participate in this ecosystem, and even just by holding, reward them and offer them a really fun experience, but then offer a deeper layer of integration and in real life access for for the collector like myself that, Goats is in here listening, wants merch, wants access to things in real life. I want meetups. I want to go have drinks. I like Web3, I like being virtual. I like drinking fine whiskey and going to country clubs and golfing. I think all of us are, and there are a lot
So
of
with
projects
with
trying to
your
bring this together.
current portfolio, so sorry to interrupt there,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
to make it in clear terms on the utility right off the bat, because you have the current rental portfolio and VR set up already. In plain terms, what you're offering off the bat is kind of a personalized experience as a rental property, right?
Oh yeah. More importantly, I mean, we're talking within Majestic's ecosystem, you'll be able to stake to own vacation token, which is basically an XP system that we're looking at being able to redeem for travel vouchers to stay at the homes. So, a lot of the times when you stay at a home, you need travel, you want to book show tickets, you girlfriend out to a nice dinner. All of these things, once again, are already built within the ecosystems of a lot of us that have built, concierge and hospitality organizations. And so the idea is, why wouldn't we reverse all of that? So even if you're a person and you can't afford to travel, buy this NFT and stake it X period of time, and you'll be able to redeem that potentially to go and do something, and to be able to have that tied to an experience that's much more than just, oh, I check into my hotel room. The art's been here for 5 years. They've never updated it, and it's just kind of bland. The idea is to bridge the two within this collection, at least, and to provide a platform that'll license it, which was doubt on. Hi, Fifi. How you doing?
Hey, what's up? Good. How are you?
Sorry, it took me a second
What's going on,
to figure out
Fifi?
how to unlock you.
All good. All good. So to preface this, I'm like pretty new to the NFT space, but I was curious if you could touch more upon, like you mentioned, the hardest part is actually figuring out all the security and legal issues before actually even making the art. And I was curious if you could just kind of like elaborate on that and talk about some of your biggest challenges in that regard.
Oh yeah. I spent a lot of time in that. So I'll tell you first and foremost, and most of us that are trying to do stuff in tokenomics know this, is technically an ICO. Anytime you do any of these DAOs do a fair launch drop, or anytime liquidity pool is being placed underneath a token, securities fraud. While it's not really an enforced thing, for those who are trying to build something genuine, it's a severe concern, right? Because there is no wrist slap for that. It usually means you're disaccredited, you're barred from ever being able to contribute financially and legitimate type of investments. And so it's a tight line that most projects are trying to navigate. Where that basically comes from is, if you raise money from a group of people, you have to follow KYC laws, which are called Know Your Client laws. Those are in line with AML, which is anti-money laundering laws, which is basically, I can't go and say, hey, I raised $50 million from 10,000 ghost wallets. I want to buy your property. There's a level of due diligence. You have to identify your investors. In most states, the max you can have, if they're accredited, is 99 within a Series A LLC. So you can't, what most people say and what I see every day is, oh, I'm going to open up this thing and we're going to pool money to buy it. Who wants to join? If you see that, don't join. It's a scam. They have no idea what they're doing.
Got it.
So those that are trying to do it right would never say that, because especially like me, I'm a doxed person. I'm a licensed person in real life. I'm held accountable to what I say. If somebody's making claims, make sure that there's somebody who's, I stand in front of city council and public officials. And so with that being said, if you could potentially, what the ruling says is you have to follow something called the Howey test. And what this kind of says is Howie has a legal right to do business with his partners. Me and you, Fifi, we want to create a DAO. We want to pool ETH. Everyone in this room does. We should have a right to do that. Howie can do business. But the securities law says there's a difference between a passive investor and a partner. And what they define that as, first and foremost, is a sweat equity clause. Are you contributing, and can it be proven? And simply holding a token doesn't meet that legal requirement, which means you can't say, oh, well, everyone in here owns the token, and by doing that, they vote on a snapshot, and there's a multi-sig wallet, and this constitutes enough to meet that. That's not the case. Those of us who've poured resources into legal say that that's not enough. What you actually would have to do is build a DAO governance platform that tracked every interactional behavior and forced that interaction amongst all of its holders, or it would not pay out or execute any of the utility granted by that token. So you would need, once again, an interface. If you raised a bunch of money and then you wanted to use that and you didn't KYC it, you would need your next version to basically be a KYC token. If you could technically do that within a DAO launcher that proves everybody's vote over a certain period, every interaction was minted to the blockchain, then we're waiting on legal consensus that would actually prove Howie was Howie, that he wasn't just a passive investor, that his behavior, amounted to that. But if you
I see. And like their engagement is
that's a
part
key
of like
piece of
their
it.
contribution.
Yes, sweat equity is a huge piece, because that's a difference between a passive investor and a partner, right? TFAR can give me money and I can give him a token to represent his equitable share, but at that point he's an investor, right? But if I prove that TFAR is building with me and he's voting on stuff, and there's a blockchain record of everything, and we call meetings and we have sub-DAO committees, and all of this is minted in real time, and I'm not talking snapshot, I'm talking, to the blockchain and trackable everything, then within RAP DAO legislation that's now come out of Wyoming, there are those of us that are looking at ways to create LLCs that are tied to EINs in real life that could use DAO governance in its structural way of voting to potentially blow up, the accredited investor model. That's not done yet, and anyone who tells you differently is lying to you. But you can bypass all of that by doing one thing, Fifi: finding somebody who already owns the assets and having them license the right to use them to you. That is completely legal. You can sell membership access, completely legal. Now, I can't say, Fifi, I can come and say, for instance, if I own 50 homes and I want to license the right to use to a crypto community and build this entire augmented experience for them and tokenize it, I can legally do that because I already own the underlying asset. Does that make sense?
Okay, that answers my biggest question. Was like, then how are all these projects
because we already own them
offering this?
That's the biggest thing, is what's going to get companies like Marriott and Bonvoy, which have everything to lose, from working with Web3 in a way that guarantees them the way. You'd have to build a launcher to do that. You'd have to show me something that would make me want to be able to do that. And licensing access is not raising money to fund it. We even see this now. Gary Vee sold an NFT to be able to access his restaurant. We see people now locking, customized event behind gated token access. That's completely legal.
Right. Because it's all like membership focused. It's not actual ownership.
Correct.
Of anything.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
The land ownership you can have in VR, right? And you can do that completely legal. And I have no doubt in 10 years, you can probably buy a home on the blockchain, as simple it is now to do it in escrow. We're not there yet, but I think functionally there shouldn't be a reason that we aren't. But it's not there yet, regulation-wise.
You did mention briefly the Wyoming law that I think was one of the first to be put into place for specifically DAO organizations, right?
True. The issue with that I see people doing is they're forming a Wyoming LLC and then calling it a DAO. And for those of you who don't know, just owning a Wyoming LLC does not make it a DAO. So, you need to, once again, if you're gonna do things right, which is just kind of new for this space because it's always about hype and not about, no one has to eat their vegetables in this space. I have to eat my vegetables. Somebody can easily say to a regulatory industry, Eric said this, and it comes right back to me and the team that's responsible for all of it. And so from that perspective, I think a lot of people in their quest in a great idea, created art and led with really great ideas, and are kind of now in a pickle where they're like, crap, we have all these funds and we want to build all this great utility and we can do it all virtually, but no one wants to give us access to all of the stuff in real life that we would need given to us to license because they see it as such a risk. And that's a big problem. And that's the reason a lot of big companies haven't come to Web3 is there's not anyone to bridge that gap. Like short-term rentals didn't blossom until Airbnb became mainstream because it made the process simple. It made it plug and play, right? Until then, it was like, go on Craigslist and rent a home. It's like, are you out of your mind? You want to die? Right? There wasn't a safe way where you could vet, and there was a community, and you could see reviews, and you could begin to build this ecosystem where someone said, oh, okay, like it's easy to interact. Right now, it's very difficult for companies in real life to interact with Web3. It's hard to even find us. It's difficult to explain the technology. It's the core challenge of this whole space, not to mention the type of people that buy certain NFTs. You know, it's like, you selfish bastards. Like, why would anyone do anything? Right? You'd have to really curate something special and offer real utility and get a core group of people that really gave a shit to launch anything, or be set in real life that you were doing it to bring real value. I mean, to be honest in front of you guys, you know, we're taking less than 6% of mint for the entire project cost. 94% of that goes to the treasury. And that'll be going into a sub-DAO community to be able to vote it on a portion of, to be able to be how to use in a lot of different aspects. Right? That's just going to be the community governance, which allows us to have a voice within this ecosystem for a lot of projects that launch. Then it becomes much more community-based and much more successful, but it allows a Web3 company to feel safe that the you know, what they're launching through is secure and isn't going to blow up in their face, and they don't want to recreate that on their own. So I don't know if that, you know, kind of covers that piece, but these are the challenges I've seen on both sides of this as I've tried to meet in the middle somewhere. So
it went VR land into law episode real quick.
Well,
but
that's
that was
the
very
part that,
informative.
like,
I mean, that a lot of people don't know that, you know, a lot of projects are not doing it right, unfortunately. So that, I think, yeah, that was a good explanation into a deep explanation of that.
Well, I think,
yeah, no, that helped me a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
I thought that was explained really, really well.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with a lot of attorneys, you know, trying to overcome that and not just stand up here and say we're gonna, you know, do X. So I hope, you know, in a very short period of time that they give us that green light, because we have a launcher that's ready for it. In the meantime, we built the entire DAO launcher around, you know, license token and membership access, you know, in a marketplace that allows that access, which is completely turnkey and already allows us to achieve majority of what our roadmap here, you know, offers as far as our, you know, our core collections that are launching. And then, you know, once again, there's probably a few bigger guys that are just waiting for that final gray piece to be cleared. And I think the whole ecosystem opens up.
I have a probably like pretty silly question, but is there any way you can like explain in super simple terms like exactly what a DAO is?
I would call Rook up to do this. Rook, you want to come up here, buddy? You're usually good at explaining these things. Put your hand up, buddy. No, I can explain. Rook is has a way with words when it comes to explaining things on the blockchain. So in a perfect world, right, especially with Web3, businesses aren't tied to jurisdiction. So it's not a US based entity. It's not a Canadian company that's there, right? Web3 knows no geographical boundaries. And so what a real DAO is it's a collection of wallets minted to the blockchain, usually within a governance system, usually like Tally or something like that, which allows them to vote collectively on ideas, store and collective funds, usually via multi-sig wallet, collaborate and vote on proposals and community efforts, function as a organization would. Go ahead, Rook, hop in, buddy.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, I'm driving. That's why I was. Yeah. So real quick, just like a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. Within the DAO, generally you're issued governance tokens. So each person within that DAO has voting rights based on proposals that the DAO would like to accomplish, and you know, and depending on your stake within that organization, generally gives you the right to a certain amount of votes within it. There are different structures and what you can do and different things that can be agreed upon. But kind of like what he was touching on, the treasury itself would generally be locked up within a multi-sig wallet, so no central party really has hold of funds and can control it by themselves. So it's basically a way that secures the way so that the community itself is in charge of the overall protocol on how things are run. As a basic overview.
Got
So
it.
like a corporation, but of shareholders, but everybody's an owner and there's no centralized party that controls the entire thing. Hopefully.
Got it. And so how would you like buy into a DAO?
So there are a couple different structures, but I think this one is, from my understanding, right, it's NFT based, so it'd be through your ERC 721 token, unless it's been elaborated
Okay,
on that
got
there's
it.
like an ERC 20 that everybody's going to receive, but a token that would give you, voting rights that you would.
So
But
what
that being said, though, any NFT isn't just because they call themselves a DAO doesn't mean they're a DAO. So you got to do your research behind it and make sure just
Okay.
because it says it doesn't mean it qualifies as one.
most
Got
people,
it.
when they say DAO, they say, here's a token. We created a snapshot .org account, right, where you can vote. But the thing is that that's not an on-chain vote. An on-chain vote actually requires a gas transaction. It's then minted. It's literally the same exact type of executable function as if you're to do something, right? And that in itself is very expensive. So most people don't do that, right? They do the bare minimum. They do give you an NFT, and they do kind of give you within a Discord or a snapshot model a way to vote. But that's not, that vote is not going to unlock or execute a multi-sig authority function. It's not going to be equitable and actually the stance of the blockchain. You would actually need to follow a DAO governance system, mint your entire structure to it. To clear one thing up, DAO itself is not a DAO. It's a launcher. It will have a sub-DAO to govern a portion of it and provide an ecosystem of feedback to the utility and the collections that'll launch on it. And the reason it can't be a straight DAO is because some things are not able to be negotiated, right? We don't have a choice to be legally compliant or to bound by state or legislative laws or any laws that come in the future. We do have a team to overdo it, right? To oversee it. However, when it comes to working with our collections and building utility and what they want to see and having a voice in that and perks and incentives for being early within that ecosystem, that's ideally what that sub DAO is going to do within it. And then obviously, the community itself can decide, within each of the ecosystems and collections that launch, if there's opportunity for DAOs. The core part of the DAO is just to simply be a bridging system for a lot of these projects to come into Web3 safely in a regulated way by actual, a blockchain mechanism, not here's an NFT, here's a snapshot vote, boom, you're in a DAO fee, congrats, post it on Twitter.
Yeah, no, that's starting to make more sense.
I saw a post today with somebody, Colombo, saying, I'm going to buy a weed partnership. Who wants to join me? And I wanted to punch myself in the forehead. And I was like, how is this shit still going on? Like, these are people, influencers posting this. Like, you guys must be children. Hey, yourself. How's it going, brother?
Hey, guys. Sorry, I'm in the car, so if it's a little windy, my apologies. But did want to ask the question. We've got the DAO platform or the DAO launcher. From a DAO governance perspective, there's DAO governance tools out there. A few of them have mentioned. Masari has one, those kind of things. The DAO governance tool that you guys are using, is that a subset or a portion of the DAO platform or launcher? Or is it going to be using a third-party kind of DAO governance software or platform itself?
The one that was built, so the one that we built by hand, that our dev did, was not any existing system. It used a lot of different codes. And the reason was because from a regulatory standpoint, on a lot of these things weren't quite there yet, or there were portions that weren't liked. So the DAO governance platform that we think will fulfill that Howey test clause is built as a compatible piece within the interface of our launcher. It's not something. So for instance, when I say that and why this is so important is some projects won't require you to KYC yourself. Most of them won't. The original mint won't. But in some cases, to activate, for instance, if you want to be a part of a true DAO wrapped launcher, when we, a wrapped DAO when we launch, you will need to KYC that wallet, right? And so I will need to burn a token or issue one that's completely KYC'd and separate from any other collection. Does that make sense? Because only if I did that and then tied it to a governance platform system that then met all those requirements, that then we then brought into our interface, so that even if you bought our token off the secondary market, the second you connected it to our site to interact and activate that utility, if you hadn't KYC'd yourself, it would ask you to do so. That way I'm never in violation or, sold somebody a security that wasn't right. Everything is maintained on chain within that exact ecosystem. Does that make sense?
So just to be clear, KYC, know your customer, right? We're talking about pretty much
Know your
anyone
client,
going
Yep.
going anonymous from, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Because some things for utility are going to have to require you identify yourself, especially if you want to contribute in an economic way. There's no way you can contribute to any economic purchase in real life without KYCing yourself. And there won't ever be a way in the future. You're just not going to have a group of dark wallets purchasing assets. It's not going to happen in any, there's going to have to be an entity within that jurisdiction, right, representing your interest, right, and doing it, and someone to bridge that interface. And that's going to require everyone that's involved in that to identify their wallets. But most collections won't. And if you're a real trader in this space, I advise you have a KYC wallet tied to an exchange. And I advise you to probably have a few backup wallets that aren't. And don't keep all your NFTs or coins in either collection. That's a safe rule of thumb to begin with if you don't. I think people are going to have to get used to giving up some level of anonymity for in real life luxury if they want it, right? When you see this now, like I ordered merch. I gave up my address on the website. I didn't panic. I got my merch. I don't feel doxxed. I already am doxxed. You know what I'm saying? I think it's going to be okay if some utility NFTs are tied to a KYC. Let me get Bundy up here.
Especially when it comes to all the like recurring revenue formats. I think you mentioned Fly Fish Club, like the restaurant. That you have to be. You can't be in on it and get paid from a real life restaurant.
You think Marriott Bonvoy's you think if you interact with their launcher, you're not going to have to KYC yourself or their intermediary? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't happen now. I mean, that happens now already. I mean, Flow Chain, you tie yourself personally to it. I mean, you trade stuff, and these intermediary launchers exist within each of the ecosystems, but they haven't been really bridged to hospitality yet. Not from a community governance way. You see Bonvoy, you see these bigger companies trying like, yeah, we'll launch a metaverse, and it's like your entire senior staff is in their late 60s and early 70s. Where do you guys get any of your Web3 advice? What communities are you in? Where are you building this around? Hey, Bundy.
What's going on, boss? Just want to say something. It always baffles me that our whole life we've had to dox, no matter what it is, Facebook, Instagram, the bank. Like, why does anybody think Web3 needs to be different? I'll never understand that.
I think because part of us in the Web2, we doxed ourselves too much and our information got sold unbeknownst to us. And we kind of gave up this idea of ever owning it. And then I think in the quest to like, when you're on one side of it and then you go super protective on the other, where you're like, now that I can be anonymous, I'm always going to be completely anonymous. And I expect everything to come through that. And I don't think that's a realistic, if you only want to have virtual utility, you can do that. But the second you want to interface with in real life companies, there has to be a little bit of give and take on what information is shared to meet their compliance needs, but also, maintain your privacy as a user. I understand that. Like, I hate that if I look at something, an ad follows me around forever, right? Like, that's the stupidest thing. And that doesn't exist on Web3. Like OpenSea's not like, hey, do you see this collection?
The other side of that is like the truly decentralization where, that's it, not going beyond it. Everything's anonymous, everything's decentralized, but, the future is somewhat, it has to be intertwined in some type of way.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's never going to be fully decentralized when you're bringing in real life assets.
Right. Like a few of these marketplaces, they're, truly not decentralized. So, yeah.
most of them have an in real life aspect, and no offense, they have to, because if you're going to say there are a few, collections that are saying they're going to buy restaurants and bars and these things, and I appreciate that. Even if you could raise the funds to do it, great. Do you guys have experiences running companies and doing this? Who's hiring and firing? You need local people tied to professional companies doing this. This isn't something that needs to be voted on by the community. You know what I'm saying? Like, Apple doesn't get to be Apple by 50,000 people voting on what Apple should look like. In some structures, you need leadership. You need people that can take the heat of growing in an unregulated industry and have the funds to do that. And, maybe in the future we could be fully, decentralized, but I just don't see it. I'd love to think so, but I think at some point there has to be that interface. I'd love to hear different. But I don't see it.
No, I don't see it, especially with the space moving as forward as fast as it is, and everybody trying to use the DAO in real life. There's just no way around it.
The other way too is, at least from the original DAO governing the community vote and a lot of these things, you don't have. What was I just going to say? I had a perfect example of it. I lost it, but you give a lot of these companies a much better outlet to be able to source their product and bring it to market in a way that's going to, mimic them within their own rights, right? And I think it's going to help, once again, bridge that and stop a lot of companies from taking advantage of their collection. I think we saw a little bit of nonsense last year with, RTFKT or whatever it was, and there was like a version of a license you did have, and then overnight you didn't. Right. And there's like a lot of this, like, oh, you own IP, and then, oh, no, you don't. It's like, oh, basically what that tells me is you guys didn't talk to your attorneys and figure out governance of what actually owned what. And then your collectors bought under one premise. And I get why you switched it, but you didn't do enough due diligence. And I think that needs to stop happening. Communities need to be more intelligent. They need to ask the right questions. They need to put pressure to leaders. And if say they call somebody up to the stage and they're like, well, how do you plan on doing this DAO? What are you doing? And if they can't answer to that, or do that, then don't put your money into it, right? It's not accountable. And I think that's phasing away, and it's going to be less of an issue. But the space is still bringing in new people like Fifi, no offense, Fifi, where the hype and allure of immediate, like, oh, I could be instead of something great, and these people are influencers, it catches a lot of people in it. DAO is used incorrectly every single day. So is Metaverse.
So do you see it being less of an issue with things like Coinbase allowing credit cards, which would, allow more new users, right? So
no, it's liquidity coming into the marketplace. I don't care. Let somebody else leverage their credit for somebody to buy ETH. Great, give me that ETH. Like, great.
yeah.
One of the first things we solved even prior to the DAO launcher was a payment mechanism, which was, if you're successful, how do you safely bridge large amounts of funds to companies without offsetting the volatility? And that was a core problem, because if you're handling large amounts of money, 2%, 3%, let alone 30% swings if it's ETH, matter a lot when you're paying people, right? Depending on if you're converting or doing that. And so, not to spill any beans, but there was a lot of underlying mechanics that we built in to the DAO, because it wasn't just legislation, it wasn't just governance, it wasn't just security. There was payment volatility and payment issuance and payment holding. As I said before, a lot of these organizations for the first time are putting ETH on their balance sheets, and they have no clue how to recognize it. You know what I'm saying? They have no idea how to move it to cash. Most don't even know about the USDC coin.
There's a ton of lawyers that won't even, touch it. Law firms as a whole.
It's all behind the entire industry. Until the industry catches up to it, it's going to be it. So you're trying to ride this middle ground. But that's the crazy thing, and you saw it with Beanie. People are going to eat their words. Twitter doesn't lie. So if you go posting nonsense, you see a lot of these ICOs now getting prosecuted 2 or 3 years from the nonsense they did in 2018. So that's the nice thing about with some of the more doxed leadership is it's going to hold those who are bad actors accountable. And that's what this space needs more than anything. We need like a good weed pruning.
I'm sure we'll see even more big names as, laws become more serious and crackdowns happen more often. But yeah, we'll see a few more big projects and big names that weren't abiding and whatnot.
I think too, it's going to bring a whole nother level of utility. I mean, just think of the best and nicest hotel you've ever checked into, or, you know, staying at your kids in a hotel room or having a separate room for them. And then their favorite NFT can be assembling on the wall. You know, we hired Rob Netterhorst because he's a VFX, you know, engineer, you know, for the ability to, you know, test VFX rooms within our vacation rentals. Because the idea of like, you know, I'm going to have kids soon. The idea of like my kid having Transformers assembled on the wall, right? Or whatever his favorite NFTs, and being able to like have my daughter have her room with an augmented room, and being able to control the art that's over the painting. You know what I'm saying? Like you can already walk into my homes and say, Alexa, turn the jacuzzi to 105 and play Marvin Gaye. If I could make all the art adopt my NFTs at the same time, like as a kid, that stuff makes me giggle. You know what I'm saying? Like that's,
Oh, for sure. I
you
mean,
know, like
that's
that's
the
the coolest
5-star
stuff.
touch.
Yeah, like,
Personalization. That's what truly matters.
you know, we talked about gated access of checking in. Now we already do that remotely, not via tokenized, but tying a smart lock to a Solidity, you know, integration isn't going to be that hard. I mean, we already see that. We just have that as an API in Web 2. And so you talk about checking in via token access, augmenting user experience with rewards based in tokens that can be redeemed for NFTs that are burnable for upgrades and enhancements in experience, right? Which reinforces the way, you know, rewards points should have been, which is not what they are now. If anyone uses rewards points, they're terribly in favor of the issuer and not the redeemer. So I think that's the sexy part, all of it. Once you figure out the nitty gritty, then you start getting really creative, and the teams and Web3 naturally should take over. Your community should say, oh, do this. And then someone says, oh, well, we can do that legally this way and then this way. And somebody says, oh, yeah, and then add this, right? But it's collectively within actually taking the legal parameters of everything, not hype, you know, more hype.
All right, well, I got to get things wrapped up here, but hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, and the Business Go for going over the Dow Dawn tonight and how we're tying things into virtual land. It got a little more into the more law side of it, but you know, that's how these spaces go. I think it was very informative side of you know, creating a DAW and the legal aspect of it. So yeah, I appreciate you and your knowledge behind that. And any last words on where they can find out more about Dowdon and where you're going from there?
Absolutely. If you hit on my Twitter page, you can find a link to .nft or search us. We should have our website live in a week or so. We pushed our art to a fun level, so we wanted to take a little bit more time on it. But I'm always active in the Discord. The team's always active in there, so by all means, check us out. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think, T-Far, we're doing this every week, right? When's the next one on this docket? We're trying to make this a reoccurring thing.
Yep. Tuesdays, usually 4:00. Sometimes we will just update you in the morning if we change the time, but every Tuesday, be here for a hospitality related topic. My project is Metaverse Hospitality, and you know, we're creating the first hotels within Sandbox within the Metaverse, and tying NFTs within that utility. And yeah, we'll work on a different few topics every week, and we'll gradually get off topic, of course, but thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.